the gute Woche, and I'd like to mention a special refuah shleima for Chaim Yisrael ben Bluma refuah shleima, as well as Bichlal. There's I'm hearing, especially from Northwest London, I'm hearing a lot of cases of people needing a refuah shleima, and the Eibusha shall help, and everyone who needs a refuah shleima should have a refuah shleima, and those who are well should stay well, and okay. So, just following on from last week, so I got the first thing which we discussed last week was talking about safety, and I quoted a Gemara from Erevin all about the danger of melach shdoimis, and that's the reason for Mayim Acharonim. That was the discussion last week. So I got a few nice inyonim of feedback from that discussion. What we mentioned in passing was about whether why women don't generally do Mayim Acharonim. And obviously, people mentioned the idea that it says in the Gemara that the neglect of Mayim Acharonim, horgu es hanefesh, caused a murder, and that's a story of the Gemara tells a story of a man who owned some jewelry, and another man, a crook, came to the man had gone out to Shul or to work, and the crook came to the house and said to the wife, your husband told me to give the jewelry which is hidden in the house, and he gave me a simon that he had eggs for breakfast, and he enjoyed the eggs for breakfast. And so the woman gave the crook, she gave him the jewelry, and then it turns out that and then the husband came home, and it was a whole thing, it was a sham, and then the husband killed the wife, and so it says that the reason why the crook was able to carry out his scheme was because he hadn't washed Mayim Acharonim, he hadn't washed off the traces of his breakfast egg from his mustache, from his so therefore, so some people say that's the reason women don't have mustaches. That's one reason, but I have a much nicer geschmackier reason for this, and that's one of our participants is Rabbi Yechiel Levitansky. He's spoke a couple of times with us. He's in Sumy in Ukraine, but he's originally from California, and his father was Rabbi Vremel Levitansky, alav shalom. And so he shared with me a word, and I kind of made a bit of research to substantiate this word. So the story is like this, that we have here a pasuk when Avram goes to battle with Sodom to save Lot, etc. And then the king of Sodom wants to give Avram a reward. And Avram says to him, I'm not going to take even a shoelace from you. I don't want you to take pride that you gave me wealth. So the question here is, what was Avram's objection? Why did he want to insist that there shouldn't be he should have begotten his wealth from the king of Sodom? After all, he went to battle, he earned it. So he explains in this Sefer that there's two types of salt. Or let me paraphrase. Salt is a very positive thing. Salt brings out the flavor in food. I'm just going to digress for a moment. I remember the Rebbe once spoke about Chazer and Chassidus, and there was a Chassid of the Mittel Rebbe, and he said to the Rebbe, I have a problem. The Mittel Rebbe had a program. He wanted to spread Chassidus in all the Shtetelach. So any Chassid on his way back from Lubavitch, he had, when the Shtetelach he passed through, he would have to repeat Chassidus. And Bichlal, he very much encouraged people to repeat Chassidus in various audiences. So there was a young chassid who says to the Rebbe that he's apparently a talented fellow, and he feels that by chazering chassidus, he gets yeshes, he gets pride. You don't give a good drasha, it's rewarding. So the Rebbe said to him, the Mittel Rebbe said to him, soll von dir werden, aber chassidus sollst du chazeren. You should become like an onion. It's probably some Yiddish idiom, I don't know. But the Rebbe took this idiom to become an onion. The Rebbe said, what is an onion? An onion on its own is lav dafka so geschmack. But you put an onion in other food, it brings out the flavor. So the same thing is, he was saying to the chassid, to the younger man, you should bring out the flavor in other people, chazer chassidus, but for yourself, you shouldn't take credit. Kolponim says salt has got two interesting properties. Salt can be used to bring out flavor. You put in a soup, in whatever it may be, it brings out the flavor. And halocho, it also is used for extracting. But then salt is also used for preserving. So you've got a salt which is, and there's a Gemara which he quotes here from Ksubas, melach momen chaser. You want to retain your wealth. Actually, by being generous, by sharing your wealth, that will be the way to preserve your wealth. So here we have, so there's a salt which is a kind of a sharing attitude. Then there is a salt which is just to hold for yourself. And that is the melech sdoim. And we see when it comes to just we're about to bench. So it says the Lashon toiv ayin hu yavoirach. The person who's generous, he should be given to give the bracha. He should be given the privilege of reading the bracha. So the host, usually the host says the benching because, all right, not going into detail, but because he's the toiv ayin, he's hosted the guests. So toiv ayin hu yavoirach. So that's the good side of salt. The sdoim side of salt is the being miserly, not sharing. And as we see, when it came to the people of Sodom, what were they punished with? Basanverim. When the Malachim wanted to start, they would try to make to lynch on the Malachim and Loit. So he says the Malachim came to the outside when the people, the crowd were there, the mob, and they were Sanverim, they were made blind. So there's a significance here. The generous aspect of Melach is Toiv Ayin, is sharing and bring out flavor in others, sharing with others. And then there is the negative aspect of salt, which is keeping it for yourself. And that's a Sodom. So this is the word which this Sefer is writing. Why did Avraham see it important to disassociate himself from the king of Sodom? He says, I am Midas HaChesed. I go to the extreme to be kind and to be generous and to be caring. You, Mr. Sodom, King Sodom, you are the other way. You are the epitome of miserliness. I don't want to have your wealth. I can manage without it. And that was his point. So here we're seeing, because you read the Gemara, it just says Melech Sodom. It doesn't explain the deeper connection between Sodom and behavior of Sodom and Mayim Acharonim and the danger, etc. So this is the vote which is well substantiated. Then comes Rabbi Levitansky, says the following: it's coming to benching. What would happen if a guest comes in just now, just to finish benching, just about to bench, and someone comes in? So why did you come so late? So a woman will say, "Oh, come in." She'll offer him something. A woman is more ready to be machnas oirich at the end of the meal than a man will be. That was his word. And therefore, at the end of the meal, the man has to wash Mayim Acharonim to express his disassociation from Melech Sodom, from the Midas Sodom of miserliness. A woman is generous by nature, and therefore is more likely. I know you're going to say this in Pirkei Avos, etc., or elsewhere. It says Rashi mentions a chumash about Eineh Tzora B'Orchim. But Baruch Hashem, things have changed since then, since Rashi's observation. And so that was upon him. That's Rabbi Levitansky's word, that because they don't have this problem of miserliness, vis-a-vis guests. Therefore, they don't need to emphasize by washing Mayim Acharonim. I want to then, since this was already on the list of questions already from Friday, so one of our participants, who's I think online now, from Eretz HaKodesh, Ilan Grossman, he sent me this quote from the Chidah. Now, Mayim Acharonim, according to Pashtus, you read in Shulchan Aruch, you should actually use a fairly generous amount to wash. You see, the minhag Chassidim is actually to wash mamish with a tiny drop of water. And so this has got a source in Kabbalah, and this is from the Chidah, one of the 70-odd Sforim which the Chidah wrote. This is the Sefer Moira Be'etzba, which is all like guidance and practical guidance in mitzvahs and minhagim, etc. So you can see which is with the blue lines. Yizoher litzoil Mayim Acharonim. Yashpil roshi etzbeosav. You should wash Mayim Acharonim, and your fingers should be dipped downwards. Yizoher sheyu Mayim ma'at. It should only be a little bit of water. Because that what we're doing here, we're giving away to the Sitra Achra. That's also why we say in benching before, when we wash Mayim Acharonim, zeh chelik adam rosha. It's as if to give the Sitra Achra, take this and be off with you. If you give a generous amount, then you're giving them more koyach as if to adhere to you. So this is what the Chidah, and this reminded me, I wanted to share with you, and I hope I don't get too many complaints about sharing the following. In the Sefer HaSiches, the Frierdiker Rebbe, it says that they wanted to, this is Sefer HaSiches Tovshin Beis, page 92 in the Yiddish. I copied it here from the English, from the Hebrew. They wanted to give the Rebbe Mayim Acharonim in a silver dish, and the Rebbe declined. And he says that once they asked once the Mittel Rebbe asked the Alter Rebbe what will be La'osid Lovay in the times of Moshiach, what will be the inyan of Mayim Acharonim? Because then there will no longer be a Ruach HaTumah. It says Ruach HaTumah Avim min ha'oretz. The spirit of impurity will be removed from the earth. So the Alter Rebbe answered that the Mayim Acharonim will be needed for those she'osku be'inyonei olam b'tara. Those who are engaging in the physical world in a pure way, it's also a certain degree of impurity, and that will be the need for Mayim Acharonim then. And so the Frierdiker Rebbe at that table, Tovshin Beis, in Pesach, 1942, so he says, when it will be when Mashiach's times, then will we be able to use silver dishes for Mayim Acharonim. So actually, I got for a wedding present, I got a Mayim Acharonim dish made of silver. So it's sitting bemokim covered on the silver cabinet, and it's gathering dust. Sometimes I use it for other things, but so there is a chassidus inyan of not using, because it's similar to the idea of the Mayim, the Negelwasser bowl. Negelwasser bowl is like we do also Pesach by night, the dish in which we pour the makis, the wine for the makis. It's a klishavur, or it's a lowly thing. In the Rebbe's house, they used to put like Negelwasser bowls on the floor between the people at the table, and it wasn't a broken bowl, but it was a lowly thing. It's a thing which you're giving to Klippa, to Tumah, so we don't want to make it too fancy. Okay, let's move on. So here I got this question during the week. Can you use a powdered sugar shaker to sprinkle sugar on cake, donuts, etc. on Shabbos? And actually, I don't see any problem. Don't see any problem at all. And let me explain. There is a problem. There is a issue of zoyre. And zoyre is throwing particles to the wind. And then the wind power scatters and separates the good from the bad. That's what they would take the grain, and after the threshing, so then they would be the chaff and the kernels which would be mixed together. And so you needed to somehow, so they would use wind power. They would throw it up in the air, and there would be a slight breeze. So the chaff, which is lighter, would fall further away. The kernels, which are heavier, which would fall close by. In that way, they would use wind power to separate. So zoyre is kind of the family of sifting and separating. The Gemara says zoyre, boirer, umaraked. which is zoyre, is winnowing, boirer is selecting with your fingers, taking the good from the bad, or the bad from the good, whichever, and merake, which is sifting. They're all doing the same thing. All the malacha, the purpose is separating good from bad or bad from good, but in different methods. That's all very true, but that's not really a problem with this sugar shaker, because the sugar shaker here is not using wind power at all. It's not like you use a salt shaker. It's not. I don't see any shiur. What I did see, whilst Baruch Hashem, you do a bit of research, I saw that some poskim have an issue of people of throwing confetti at a chosen. I guess it's less painful than boiled candies, yeah. But they say they're throwing confetti, so it uses the wind to scatter. Okay, fine. But here, this sugar shaker, I don't see any shiur at all. Actually, years ago, I'm reminded, years ago, someone asked me about using a sieve on Yom Tov to scatter, to scatter icing sugar to decorate a cake. At the time, I spoke to Dayan Friedman, Zal sein gesund, and here's another question of using a sieve. And so you're allowed to use a sieve in a shinui. So he advised me to tell her, the one who asked the question, to take the sieve and turn it upside down. And so you can use the sieve to scatter the sugar, but it should be with a shinui. That was talking about Yom Tov. Let's move on. Using sprays. Are you allowed to use a spray on Shabbos? So actually, the aerosols are not a problem, because it's not that there's air pressure together with the liquid. The air pressure is pushing the liquid, but it's not that it comes out a mixture of air and liquid. If it was that, then you would have a problem of zoyre. But let's go on to the next thing. Someone asked me during the week about having fish with cheese, fish and cottage cheese. So this is taken from the first Siman in Bosa B'Cholov in Yeridea, Siman Pei Zayin. And the first quote which you have at the top of the screen is from the Shach. And the Shach quotes from the Ateres Zohov. The Ateres Zohov is the Levush, the Reb Mordechai Yafo. So he called his compendium of Sforim, they're known as the Levushim. Well, his name was Mordechai, and Mordechai were various Levushim. So he named his various Sforim according to the names of the garments which Mordechai Hatzadik goes out in front of in Shushan. So you've got Levush Atcheles, Levush Ateres Zohov, and Levush, etc. At any rate, so the Levush, he writes that you should not have dogim b'cholov, you shouldn't have fish and milk together because of sakona. And he refers to Arachaim, etc. And so this is the Shach, the Shifsei Kohen of Shabsei Kohen. He is saying that Abel Hu Tos, it's a mistake. There's no issue of fish and milk. The problem is fish and meat, and that's the issue of sakana. But with fish and milk, it's not a shaman of loirainu. It's not never seen that it should be a problem, and it's very common. Kol yoma v'yoma people they cook fish and milk together. That's what the Shach says. Next. Then we have on the margin of the Shulchan Aruch, we have the Sefer called Pischei Tshuva. So he quotes the Shach Bar Heitev, who says it's not a problem. Again, so what happened here? The Levush says it is a problem. The Shach says it's not a problem to have fish and milk. Then he quotes the Sefer Chinuch Beis Yehuda, who supports the position of the Levush, that there is an issue of having milk and fish together. And he's asked medical experts about, and he says fish fried in butter, that's okay. But fish cooked in milk is actually a health hazard, because fish is mekarerim me'od, has got a cooling off nature, and milk is not a very healthy food. The combination is unhealthy. The Chassam Sofer disagrees, and he says medically it's not true. And then so we have here back and forth. Then you have the Pri Megadim quotes Knesset Agdola, also says that fish with milk is a sakona, but with butter and with shuman haniklat me'al gabe hacholov. Now, for those who are born into only seeing homogenized milk, they don't know the geschmack of getting the bottle of milk with an 1.5 inch cream at the top, and this now you don't see it bichlal. So the top of the milk in Yiddish it's called smetana, the cream of the milk. So he says v'chemo or shuman hanik the smetana, the cream which is skimmed off the top of the milk, that is not a problem with fish. And then he says that with milk it's the chatchila, but it's not a problem. So it goes back and forth. So here we have, and then this is again we have another sefer which quotes that sakona but gemura badag im givino. Fish with cheese is a problem, and with milk it is a problem, and even b'diavad it's a problem, but fish with butter is not a problem. So what we're seeing here, various opinions, and then we have. We want to have a kind of bottom line. So the next quote is from the Tzemach Tzedek. This is from the Rebbe's Rishimis, which he heard from Frierdiker Rebbe. And this is a quote from the Tzemach Tzedek. Isur dogim becholov. The objection to having fish together with milk. Choshvim leplitas hakulmus. Some consider it as a copyist error. It was meant to be dogim. It was meant to be dogim in baso. But still, we are particular about this. Ma'arivin oidma. We would, with the milk, just milk alone, we wouldn't have with fish. Instead of mixing something else, chem or smetana, a bit of butter, a bit of cream. So when there's, why I went through this carefully, we're seeing here milk with fish. We're seeing that there are those who object. With butter, we're seeing clearly that there seems to be no problem at all. And then, what about cheese? And with the cheese, there was the last quote here did have a problem with cheese. Those who are brought up in the Lower East Side have a minig toiv of having every Sunday morning bagels and lox and cheese. Yeah. So the cream cheese is, and Baruch Hashem, the generations have been having bagels and lox and cheese, and it doesn't seem to have harmed anyone in health. Good. So the cream cheese has got the cream, and therefore I don't see that being a problem to have it with the lox, which is fish, but having just milk and fish is an issue, which we would avoid. Yeah. Just I don't know if anyone from Ukraine is online today, but when I was in Ukraine, so we were given a tour in the orphanage in Odessa. So they gave us the soup of the day. It was a fish soup. Like you have chicken soup, they had a fish soup, and it was. Listen, I managed. I survived. Okay, let's go on to the next thing. So here, the question here is a question I received from Eretz Yisrael. But so the question is the following: because of possibly the peace, the Abraham Accords, etc., there seems to be a new market. There's a market out there in these countries. This I'm just guessing, that they would appreciate some alcohol, which till now has been, unaccessible or couldn't be sold in public. So now he has an opportunity to sell alcohol to these markets. He has a non-Jewish partner. Says, asking, can he sell wine, non-kosher wine? He wants to sell kosher wine also, but he wants to look into the possibility of selling non-kosher wine. To make things more interesting, at the moment there's the Jewish boy and his a non-Jewish partner, Lahavdil, and now he's also thinking of bringing a Sefardi partner. Does that make things better or worse? Because often the Halocho by the Sefardim is often more lenient. but here actually it makes it worse. And before reading the Shulchan Aruch, I want to share with you that years ago I was in Australia for a couple of years, and there was a Chassidish Yid who had a business of selling alcohol. His main business was selling whiskeys and vodkas, etc., but he also sold wine, non-kosher wine. And I asked him, and he said he's a wholesaler. If his customers will come to him, and they'll only be able to buy spirits, and they won't be able to buy wine, so the likelihood is they will go to another supplier, another wholesaler, less headache, and they'll buy everything from them. He felt possibly from experience, his business was not viable without also selling wine. But let's now read. So with that background, let's read the Shulchan Aruch. So this is, as you see in Yerdea, Kuf Chav Gimel. Before reading the Shulchan Aruch, I want to say there's two types of Isur with wine. There's Yain Nesech and there's Stam Yeinom. Yain Nesech means wine which was actually consecrated, poured for Avodah Zarah, for worship of idols. Then you have Stam Yeinom, which means it wasn't that we have no reason to assume that it was used for worship. It's just for socializing. And it says, Gozru al Yeinom mishum b'noiseyim, that it shouldn't come to bring down social barriers and to intermarriage. That's the reason for the. But when it comes to Bishul Akum or Pas Akum, which is also because of Kirva becoming too friendly, it's Isur Achila. Why did wine become an Isur Hanor originally? The Yain in the Gemara, you look at Gemara B'Dezorah, Goyish wine was also Bahanor. So there's possibly two ways of looking at it. One is to say that once they made an Isur on this wine, they had to make it like the other wine. Since the wine of worship is also Bahanor, so they asked the wine also for social reasons, also they asked it Bahanor. Or do you say it was they saw the need for social reasons, for anti-social reasons, to make the wine also Bahanor? And that's Daf Kimin el Haloch. And now let's read the Haloch inside. Stam Yeinom Shel Amomin Oyevdei Elilim. Wine which you don't know. So the word stam means unqualified. We don't know whether it's been consecrated for worship. Osu Bahanor. It's you're not allowed to have benefit from it. For that matter, if they touch our wine, it's also Bahanor. Then let's go down a couple of lines. Nowadays that it's not common for goyim to consecrate wine for worship. There are those who take the position, no, that goyish wine is only isur achila, shtia. It's isur to drink, but it's not also Bahanor. And therefore, goyish wine, whether they're touching our wine or their own wine, is mutar Bahanor. Stam Yeinom. If a goy owes you money and he doesn't have with what to pay, but he has a bottle of wine, so you're allowed to collect the bottle of wine from him to settle your debt. But to buy and sell goyish wine is not allowed. But yesh mekilin gambose. There are those who do permit but trading in goyish wine. But toiv lahachmir. So so you're seeing here three positions. We're seeing a position is also Bahanor. We're seeing a position that it's mutar Bahanor, but only b'di'evet, not lechatchila. And then we're seeing a third position that you are allowed, it's mutar Bahanor, even lechatchila. So the story which I told you of this Eid in Australia, he had what to rely upon. Now, a bit of history. About 400 years ago, this question came up. I suspect some of you are familiar, there was a Vada Arba Rotzis. There was like a kind of rabbinical body an umbrella body for the several countries in Eastern Europe, whatever. And so you have Maram Lublin. If you know where Lublin is, it's like the southern part of Poland. Poland kind of borders with Slovakia, and just south of that is Hungary. So Maram, he's the Rov in Lublin, and he deals with the question from a town called Rimanov. Rimanov is even closer to the border. And it turns out that the people of Rimanov were very much into, they were a border community. So they would import wine from Hungary and sell it in Poland, and they would take goods, grain, whatever it may be, wares from Poland and sell it in Hungary. That was, so I guess they made money on both trips. And so it came up in the Vad Arba Rotzes, a terrible thing, that there's these Yidden in Rimanov, and they're all trading in Goyish wine. So Maram Lublins was given the job to sort it out. So I looked on the map, you can see where it is exactly. And they said that Mamish, this, if they cannot trade with the wine, it's really will affect their parnosa terribly. So he conceded. He said the following: to buy wine, that I can't allow you. You're not allowed to trade, buy wine to sell. But if you go to Hungary and you'll sell goods, and they won't owe, and they owe you money, they won't pay you. So you'll be able to take the wine to settle payment, not to actually buy the wine, but in order to settle the payment. That's what we're seeing here. And he saw this as a kind of b'diavad. That was his concession. There's another later Sefer who's more lenient about the wine, to kind of be melamed chus on the fact that people do, that Yidden were trading with wine. So it did happen. Now, here we're talking about someone going to a new business. I didn't feel there was a grounds to say it's a b'diavad. It's talking about lechatchila. The fact that he's going to bring a Sefardi partner makes it actually worse, because the Mechaber, the Shulchan Aruch, says it's also b'hanoah, point blank. There's nothing to talk about. It's the Ramo who starts saying lechatchila b'diavad, tzayv lahachme, etc. So the fact that he's going to bring a Sefardi partner is actually going to make it more difficult. Now, there is a tshuva of some sofer who talks about this also, and he talks about going in as not as a buyer and seller, but go in as an agent. You are like introducing. You'll just introduce this one to that one, and you'll get a profit, not because you owned the wine and resold it, but you'll make your money by as an agency fee. Having said that, but if you read the Shulchan Aruch carefully, we're saying lechatchila, it's also b'hanoah. Even as an agent, it's also lechatchila also b'hanoah. So I didn't see that solution of the Chassam Sofer, which is talking there about meat. He's not talking about wine. Here it's isur hanoah lechatchila, because the issue of b'nei seyen, the issue of intermarriage, is still today. And therefore, if you say that the reason why they decreed that what Goyish wine is also is because of socializing, and they took to the extreme of also hanoah, so applies today also, hasn't changed. So what I suggested to them was, instead of buying and selling wine, to open up a sister company, to open up two companies. There's like Frowine used to have, and perhaps I mentioned it not long ago, Frowine would sell kosher meat. But what does he do with all the treifas and all the hindquarters, etc.? So Frowine had another company called Canine Foods. So you can open that he has a Goyish partner. So for the liquor and for the whiskey and whatever which is kosher, this will be one company. And there'll be a sister company which will be exclusively owned by the Goy, and they will be able to do all the paperwork, etc. It's something which I think a very workable solution. It's just that these deliveries are from a different company, and in that way, it's a kosher thing. And the Yid Taka doesn't make any profit on the wine. They didn't get back to me whether it works or not, but that's what I would suggest. Let's move on to the next thing. A bris. So the question here is, there was a Shiloh Lamaisa this week, there was a bris, and the bris was in the afternoon. Does one say tachnun at Shacharis when there's a bris in the afternoon? So there's a sefer which was published recently called Minhogim V'Hanhogos from someone called Rabbi Nachum Vahava, and he's actually he's a big Talmud Chochem, and I've met him, but he writes there in his sefer that if the bris is in the afternoon, that's not an excuse for not saying tachnun in the morning. But I think he's wrong, and I'm going to quote one of his sources actually. Yeah, so it's when you have these Sefardim, it's important to look up the sources. So this is a sefer from Reb Chaim Noah. Now Reb Chaim Noah was a chassid of Rebbe Rashab. There was he spent a couple of years in Gruzia as a Rov in Gruzia. He spoke Arabic fluently, and he spent several years in Egypt. He was a Rov in Egypt, I think in Alexandria. And it was then he wrote this, this sefer called Shnois Chaim. There's certainly a sefer about his Halocho written in Arabic and Hebrew. And so he writes the following. So this is before the Ksos HaShulchan, but it's the same person. So he writes the following. If it's mincha and the bris has been already, if you're davening at the location of the bris, you don't say tachnun. If davening is elsewhere, even if the Baalei bris are there, then everyone else does say tachnun, only the Baalei bris, that means the father, the moyel, and the sandik, they will not say tachnun the whole day, but the rest of the people will say tachnun in the afternoon. Then he writes, V'im oisim hamilo be'erev, u'mispalel mincha beis knesses koidem hamilo, v'echo b'Baalei abris imam ein oimrim tachnun. If the bris is in the afternoon, you won't say tachnun. V'yav b'tfilas Shacharis ein oimrim tachnun, afal pisha hamilo tia be'erev. Even though the bris is going to be in the afternoon, you don't say tachnun at Shacharis. Chaim Noah says that clearly. So now let's read in Ha'oreh Rov Aleph, Gam Zeh Poshut. This is from his Ha'orahs, and that's in Makar Chaim in the same sefer. The Dav Kebet Tefillah Hasmucha Lechupa Ein Oimim Tachnun. He has a business of the chosn in the morning. That if the chosn is in the afternoon, you do have to say tachnun. We're not knowing that in any case. But then he said, Baalei bris. The logic here is Kol Yoim Hashmini Ad Achasiyas Hamila Chayovim Ani Bechvoidoi Bein B'Mila Shoy B'Bein. The Baalei bris, he's got a mitzvah. That mitzvah is the whole day. So even though it's at Shacharis, but the mitzvah is going to be done in the afternoon, but he is a Baalei bris because it's the duty upon him to do the bris today. And therefore, he says clearly that you would miss tachnun even at Shacharis, even if the bris is in the afternoon. I want to add to this the late Rav Ashkenazi, the Mordechai Ashkenazi, the Rov of Chabad. He also wrote about this, and he differentiates between a bris and a chasana and a chosn. A chosn exempts you from tachnun only when the chosn is present. By the bris, it says in the way it's written in the Siddur, either if one of the Baalei Simcha are present, by the Baalei bris, or the Shul where the bris is going to take place. So you have, it's interesting, there are shuls in Crown Heights where they host brisin. And the people come, the 7 o'clock minyan, 6 o'clock minyan, there's a bris at 11 o'clock, and they don't say tachnun. But so Rav Ashkenazi, he justifies this, and he says, there's a whole business of the sandik. You don't have the same person sandik twice, because the santakos is compared to ktoiris. Baruch Hashem Chayla, it's the whole thing. So the sandik's knees, the sandik's lap is like the mizbech of ktoiris. So Rav Ashkenazi's word is that the shul, the premises where the bris is going to take place, today has become like a Beis HaMikdash. Because today there's going to be a mizbeach, and there's going to be aktoras aktoris. So that makes the shul upgrades the shul into Beis HaMikdash, and for that privilege, for that recognition of that, one doesn't say tachnun even in the morning, even though none of the Baalei bris are there, the baby is not there, no one. And that's Rav Ashkenazi's chiddush. Very nice. Okay. and no one would dispute the unless there are people who want to say tachnun, but heintige Zeiten, that's not the minhag. The minhag is people looking for excuses not to say tachnun. Okay, next question. Someone called me this week, someone from France, and this is Dafka a Sefardi family, and by the Sefardim, they give the name after the living grandparents. So the grandfather of the child is called Yaakov. And the Bris, they gave the name, the father wanted to give the name Aron Yaakov, but at the Bris, he just said the name Aron. They forgot to say Yaakov. So what happens now? So now let's read, and you have to understand, by the Sefardim, if they don't give the name of the grandfather, it can be taken they can take it as an insult. You didn't give my name to my grandchild. So there's an inyan of kibbut av over here. It's a serious business. And by Ashkenazim, it's the other way around. But fine. Ashkenazi, you say, you don't want me to live anymore. By this Friday. All right, so let's read here. This is a sefer from Rav Zusha Vilhelm, a sefer all about names. So now he says like this. One who has in his mind a name to give his child, and when it came to the Bris, and they said, Yisrael, he said a different name, not the name which he had prepared. So the name which he said remains. And then we have what happens if what happens if the one who said the name made a mistake. He didn't hear you properly. You said Eliezer, and he said Elio. So then that's not an issue. Then he made a mistake. It's the owner of the name, so to speak, is the father. So if the one who recited the bracha said the wrong name, that's irrelevant. But here it's not that wasn't the problem here. The problem is that the father Taka forgot at that moment to say the name Yaakov, and so I would say that at this point the boy is not called Yaakov. But meanwhile, the grandfather keeps on calling him Yaakov because he's Machzach and Shvisnik, just as well. So I said to him, you can add the name later. You have the choice. You can add the name later, and Shalom Al Yisrael. I especially felt because it's, as I say, it's a Shalom Bayis issue because Kibbut Av rather. So it would be correct to add the name to Mana Shalom. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so this question I got from somewhere in Europe. Now someone's moving into an apartment. They don't know how long they're going to be there. And this is the surface. There's a goyish a previous user of the goy, evidently. And you can see what the tile surface is. It's a ceramic tile surface. And we know that you can't cash a ceramic. So what can you do? To start, ripping up the tiles is not practical. It's not their house, it's a rented accommodation. Actually, I felt that it's not such a big problem. And I'll explain to you why. It's true you cannot cash your tiles. You cannot cash a ceramic. I'm going to step back a moment. How did that counter become treif? Did they actually put a tray for pudding, a tray for meat directly on the counter? Most of us, most civilized people, I believe, I'm including myself, by the way, don't put hot moist food directly on a counter. If you wanted to cut up a kugel or similar, you'd probably put it on a cutting board or something. To put it directly on the counter is unusual. Right. Number one. Now, never mind what the Goysher user was doing, how would I use the counter? Again, the normal usage is that I don't put hot, moist foods directly on the counter. Normally, there would be something intervening. Now, I want to throw in another point. There's a concept, as many of you know, that if a dish is eine ben yoimo, it hasn't been used for 24 hours, so the tray for taste in it is considered pogum, it's rancid, and it doesn't make treif. That's a well-known thing. So if that's the case, why can't I use a treifa dish which was used yesterday for treif? For today, it's 24 hours later. Why can't I use it? So there's a din lechatchila. Tam pogum is also lechatchila. You're not allowed to lechatchila use something which is off, an off treif taste. Lechatchila you should avoid it. Very true. Now coming back to this counter. When I use this kitchen, I'm not going to use I'm not going to put hot foods down directly on the surface. I'll put down a hot pot, yes, but I'm not going to put food directly on it. There may be a spill, but that's not my normal way of using. On these, combining these factors, didn't necessarily become treif in a normal way, as in normal usage. It's not like a dish where you put the food directly. It's not normally used that way. Further, my usage of it is not going to be normally by putting hot foods directly on it. Therefore, there's ample grounds to be made. Then, but I don't want to stay with that. I wanted to be more machmir and say you should kasher it. You should kasher it with boiling water. Pour boiling water over it. Do it 3 times. And that I'm relying on the Itur. Itur, I think, was a little bit before the Rambam. The Itur, he writes that although it says in the Gemara, which means that the Torah testifies that earthenware will not be expunged of its treifa taste ever. So he says that's only if you dip it once in hot water. If you dip it 3 times in hot water, it's a bit of a hit and miss. The first time may not be the right temperature, but 3 times for sure you get the right temperature. And you can kasher, he holds you can kasher kli cheres by dipping it in 3 times into different bodies of boiling water. We don't paskin like the itur generally. However, this is brought in the Shulchan Aruch in the end of Siman Kufyun Gimel for Bishul Akum. Bishul Akum, which is a pure drabonon. So you can kasher kli cheres, you can kasher earthenware from Bishul Akum by kashering it 3 times with hot water. So I felt that here's even less of an issue because it's, as I said, it's very much a accidental kind of usage to become treif and to use it for kosher, and therefore I felt as a chumrah to kasher it with 3 times with boiling water. And Baruch Hashem, I spoke to a couple of other rabbonim during the week, and I was pleased that they agreed with the approach, and so I'm happy to go ahead with it. Let's move on. Someone's asking me a question that he has been invited to make the brachas under chuppah. There's someone called the Masada Kiddushin. Nowadays, a Masada Kiddushin is the one who's holding the camera. He says, stand here, stand there, up, down. He's the Masada Kiddushin. And if he didn't get the Kiddushin right, didn't get the picture, he'll tell the chosin to give the ring again. He says, I'll say, whatever. But what's the claim to fame of the Masada Kiddushin? Because sometimes the chosin doesn't know how to read the brachas. So the Shaloi Levi is not to embarrass, is eingestellt. It's been established that you have a Masada Kiddushin who recites the brachas. So the qualification to be Masada, I'm a bit tongue in cheek. So to recite the brachas is so long as you know Ivra. And you can recite the brachas. Of course, you need to have someone to know to run it properly. But to recite the brachas under the chuppah, so long as you know that to read the brachas properly, you're qualified. So in this community, they have a minhag that the people reciting the brachas wear a talis. So he's asking, should he wear? He's Lubavitcher. Lubavitchers are a little bit uneasy about wearing talisim, but mincha, whatever. Should he wear a talis? So this is not a problem. But if you are going to wear a talis, better you do like the Frierdiker Rebbe did. Frierdiker Rebbe, when he was sandik, he used the same talis in the morning. And he said he had in mind in the morning, he'll use the same talis in the afternoon, whatever, a few hours later, it was morning, whatever, a few hours later, he used the same talis. So although normally when you have an interval of several hours, even if you had in mind, you still have to make a new bracha, there is grounds to say, didn't he? It looks like he wanted to avoid saying a bracha again on the talis. It could also be because he wore it on his shoulders. The sandik usually doesn't wear the talis over his head. So he's not wearing the talis in the normal way. So at any rate, the Frierdiker Rebbe had used his own talis, and he had in mind in the morning that this should be included. The later wearing should be included in the morning bracha. So this is what I advised this rabbi who is being invited to say bracha. Bring your own talis along, and you have in mind in the morning. Then, on Friday, I got a message, someone asking a chosin by the ufruf, does he make a bracha on the talis? And I mean, I'm sure most of us remember not making a bracha, not because we asked the question, but usually a chosin, again, doesn't wear the talis over his head. The chosin wears it only on his shoulders. And the chosin is not so confident, doesn't know how, even after the chasna, they don't always know exactly how to do that atifa unless they get a special lesson. But the chosin usually doesn't wear his own talis. He's wearing someone else's talis. On someone else's talis, and it's only covered, so then one could be leave it that they don't have to make a bracha. Don't do atifa, don't say a bracha, just put it on just over your shoulders. And no. Okay. Let's move on to the next two. We have two more questions. One is, someone asked the following question. He lent a relative a $10,000 for a week. That was a few years ago. So now he's asking, can I use my meiser? He sees that it's not coming back in a rush. So can he use his meiser to pay off the debt? It's not such an easy shaila. And there may be different levels in this. If the borrower is in a position, I want to tell you a story. One time, Reb Chaim Vosner, he was the Rov here in London, and two people came to him, and this one owes the other one a lot of money, and the debtor says, I don't know what to pay. So Reb Chaim Vosner says, tell me, how do you get here? You live on the other side of town. He says, I came by car. Them is car. I came on my car. I have a car. So he says, hand over the keys. You owe money? Hand over the keys. The point which I want to bring out is, Chaim Vosner says, what do you mean you don't have money? You have a car. Sell the car and give him the car. Very often people owe money, but doesn't mean they don't have a penny. They have property, they have assets of mobile or immobile assets, but they don't have fluid cash. I understand. I'm not dismissing, but so the person, let's say this relative does have some money. The first, of course, it's uncomfortable. He should start selling his shas and his china, etc. So then it's more correct that you can say, you know what, he's struggling. I'll use my meiser money. And you should actually tell him. You should actually tell him that you're using your it's not here on the list. You should tell him that you're using the meiser money to settle it. I want to bring out but there could be another situation. Let's say the borrower is no longer here, went bankrupt, and there's no one to talk to. He's not here. So then you can't use your meiser because there's no one to pay the debt. It's not as if you're going to give him the money and take the money back. So it's not so poshut. So if there is a degree of viability that you would be able to collect the debt back from him, but he's struggling, then you could use your meiser and you tell him that you're using your meiser to pay it off. But if it's past that, then actually you wouldn't be able to use your meiser to pay it off. So it's a bit, how do you say, counterintuitive. Where it's more desperate, you can't use your meiser. When it's less desperate, you can use your meiser. Okay, fine. Finally, we have a last question, which I have for tonight, is that someone was right.
That is the idea of using that meiser so that when he may eventually get paid back, he pays back the meiser. Is that what that is?
You're being too optimistic.
Okay.
I don't think so. He's just realizing it's not happening. And he'll just pay it off gradually, and over a few years, hopefully, he'll be able to just tell him, forget it. We'll be friends again. The last thing is that someone was driving last week, and he noticed in his rear view mirror, he noticed a rainbow. So he asked the question: should you or should you not make a bracha on something which you see in the rainbow? So here you have a quote from a sefer called B'Tzel HaChochmah. I've mentioned him not so long ago. He was the Rav. He was called the Hermannstädter Rov, and he was a Rov in Melbourne for several years. B'Tzal Stern, and he specialized in the halochos of travel. Basically, he takes the view that on a reflection, you wouldn't be able to say a bracha. Actually, it's mentioned, I'm trying to remember now, as I'm speaking, it says about the Koyanim, when they did the stuff for the Sota, they had to do it l'shma. So but they're not meant to look at her, especially such a woman who's suspect of such kind of conduct. It's not right to look at her. So the B'maris HaTzovis, they looked at the Kiyar. In the Kiyar, they were able to see a reflection. So it wasn't, when you see something in a reflection, it's not a proper ear. So he takes the view that you cannot make a bracha on seeing something in a reflection. So he says you could not make a bracha on that. So that would be the Psak Halocha. You can say without Hashem's name, but just to say the full bracha wouldn't be okay. Let me just finish off. My own memory that one time my rear view mirror broke off, like the middle of the windshield, how do you say, the windscreen, it broke off, and I found it difficult to drive without it. And I went to visit my mother, Aleh Shalom, and so we're talking about, felt that my mother never drove, so I tried to explain to her what does it mean, a rear view mirror. And the vote which I want to take from this is we have a history and we have a future. And I explained to my mother that as I'm driving ahead, the behind is part of my future. And that's, I think, relevant to every one of us. Our chinuch, which we are now past, can serve as being an inspiration for our future. And so this is just this Shabbos chazed over the sicha of Bikash Yaakov Legalis Esaketz. So Yaakov gave us the ability to be bnei chorin, to look forward to the future. So this is the rear view is telling us that there's going to be a geula with Mashiach Tzidkenu. And what happened? And just very, very briefly, L'chayre Yaakov was a failed attempt. He wanted to Bikash Legalis, and says the Rebbe, it wasn't a failed attempt. He actually communicated the fact that you didn't feel bnei chorin. The word of the Frierdiker Rebbe, as with Shem Rebbe Rashab, as the neshamas that came on the gegangen in Golus, that the Eid is in the essence, Eid is a ben chorin. There may be circumstances you have to conform to a certain degree, but in essence, Eid is higher than that. Why is that? Because the Eid knows the Geula is going to come, and that gives us that, and that's also by Aron B'Mitzrayim, the fact that there's the knowledge, that gives us the knowledge that we're here, as in the game of Monopoly by the jail. We're just visiting. We're not in jail. We're only just bypassing, and the Kor of Mamish will go to the Geula Mitzvah Shlemo mit Mashiach Tzidkenu Malkeinu B'Resheinu. A gute Woche.
Good work.
Good work, Stecher.
Good work. Thank you very much.
A gute Woche.